Once again, I'm without my normal equipment and I'm also about a week late for this review. I have also sat and watched what is hopefully the longest sewer clown movie I'll ever see in my life, and I really don't want to do a long review of it. Most of what I have to say about It Chapter 2 applies to the first film, which I guess is It Chapter 1 now, right? Like retrospectively. So with that in mind, what I'm thinking is I'm just going to do 5 minutes with 5 points about It Chapter 2, and that's going to be the review. How does that sound? Hope it sounds good, because this is not an interactive format, so if you said no, then that's not going to be reflected in my video. Firstly, there's too many characters. Now, the real good thing about splitting It into 2 movies instead of being one story told altogether is that it gives you more time to develop the kids section and the adult section. Here they don't quite do that, they sort of half-arse it, which kind of works. So they have lots and lots of stuff with the adult losers, but then they also have the kid actors back playing the losers. The issue with that is you're not looking at 1 performance per character, but at least 2 performances per character, because of course some of them play a version of themselves that's portrayed by Pennywise as well. So really those are like 3 performances. That makes it awfully hard to keep track of stuff, and not only that, but the movie, despite making some quite significant adaptational changes to the book, decides somehow to keep some characters who could definitely be cut. Bev's abusive husband and Bill's wife get kind of major introduction scenes, and then their plots, which are in the book, are not in the film. That's doubly weird when you consider that they keep a very, very watered down version of the Bowers plot, which is definitely a good part of the book and is pretty well treated in the miniseries version as well, but here just falls completely flat. Carrying on over from that, it's got a slightly funky plot. The kind of token gathering focus of the really middle hour of this unconscionably long, schlocky film is completely consumed by the losers gathering these tokens that kind of represent memories or significant moments in that fateful summer where they thought that they got rid of Pennywise. It feels kind of like a video game plot more than anything else. It feels like token collecting in a video game. Not only that, but where the film should really be building a cohesive story about these people hanging out together and rediscovering their lives, it separates them out at that really important moment. There are constant flashbacks in the movie. It almost feels like deleted scenes from the previous film that they know is kind of more popular. In fact, at least one of these is actually a deleted scene. Aside from the awful issues that it brings to the pacing, it also makes the film feel kind of bitty. Nothing in it really feels that fully developed, and it's because it's running around doing all this stuff all the time. But most of all, I dislike it because I think it cheapens an important narrative beat in the original film. It turns out that instead of having this sad, soul-searching moment and then coming back together to fight Pennywise, the kids all went off and had their own weird little adventures that we just didn't hear about until now. Number 3, more stupid spookhouse scares. All these individual sequences have their own scares, but what that means is that they don't really feel that connected to the characters. You might be able to get away with just having something because it's scary, or more often than not, just startling, I think, in a lot of horror movies. But in this case, where you have a monster whose whole gift is supposed to be that he can really get in your head and work out what makes you afraid, some of these scares seem really disconnected to the characters. Richie is in this kind of soul-searching mode, and then he's attacked by an animated Paul Bunyan statue. Has Richie got a deep-seated fear of Paul Bunyan? I think these random scares can be done well, but they have to have a sort of internal logic. And actually, one of my favourite scares from It 1, or It Chapter 1, or It Book 1, or whatever we're going to start calling it, was where Stanley, I think, is scared of a painting that's in his dad's study. Now that's pretty disconnected in some way from the characters. It's not about a deep-seated fear that Stanley has. But what I really like about it is that it's the kind of fear a kid has. It's this random painting that you don't quite like and spooks you out a bit, and you're fine with it as long as someone's in the room with you, but the moment you're left alone with it, oh, you'd rather not look at the painting. That's a cool scare. That's an interesting idea that's developed and is clever in the context of the movie. Animated Paul Bunyan statue, less so. I should say this is quite compounded by this film in general being more silly than the previous movie. And in particular, I think about the bit where Eddie kind of has another face-off with the leper, which is suddenly interrupted by like a slice of Angel in the Morning for some reason. I don't understand what that tonal choice is. Is Pennywise playing a slice of this song? Is it for us, the audience members? Number 4 is about adaptational changes made here. Now, I quite like it when a movie makes strong adaptational changes. The main issue for me with the losers as adults is that a lot of their plot is taken up by a love triangle between Bev, Bill, and Ben. I think that's okay in its own right. In the book, it works better than it does in the 90s miniseries, where I think the actors' chemistry isn't quite right and it doesn't quite work in the movie. Here, you know, they've kept it, but they've tried to balance it by having this story of Richie's self-discovery, which I think is a really carefully told part of the movie that works, I think, fundamentally. The issue with it is I don't think it really rebalances the kind of story structure for the adults so much as it just starves the love triangle of the attention that it was kind of absorbing in the previous adaptation. And so for me, that's not fully successful. Like, I can see why they did it, and I think it's a good thing that they did it. I think it's well handled, but it doesn't quite achieve what it's supposed to achieve. And on top of that, you're faced off with the movie constantly making jokes about how Bill is incapable of ending stuff, which I can only take as a reference to how weak the ending of It is, both as a book and in the adaptation of the miniseries in the 90s. Now, having made so much noise about Bill not being very good at endings, I was thinking, wow, I bet they've worked out a really good ending, and they didn't. You know, it's not really any better. So maybe Stephen King's stuff just can't have a good ending. I mean, The Shining is probably the best ending to any Stephen King adaptation, and it largely ends by not really resolving anything. So what are you gonna do? Number 5, I just want to say I would love to see more big budget, goofy horror movies like this. I know I just gave a really negative review to the movie, but it's interesting. It's an interesting movie that plays with a lot of big ideas, and it does so with a big budget. There's exciting camera work and weird scare sequences and really talented actors, and that's exciting as a horror fan. Yes, this isn't the movie I wanted from that, but it is a really interesting film in terms of how it approaches being a blockbuster horror, which I think is a very rare thing. So, less It overall, probably an hour less, by the way, probably a 2-hour horror movie, thank you very much. But also more It, please. More big budget, goofy, weird horror movies. That's it from me, and thanks for sitting through this very pared down version of my reviews. Bye for now.